so much of it starts with yourself, like knowing how things land in your nervous system, learning what you're making those things mean, getting to those core feelings, those core fears, so you can do a lot of that work with yourself.
Yes.
Like without your partner even knowing that you're doing that work.
Yes.
Just you slowing down those interactions and delivering things in a way that people can hear them, right? Like, that hurt me, or I felt afraid when you didn't call. That delivery alone is going to be something different.
Welcome to Insights from the Couch. I'm Colette Jane Fair, licensed couples therapist.
And I'm Laura Bowman, licensed individual therapist. And today we are talking about how to revitalize your status quo stale relationship with your partner. And Colette is going to have a ton for us today because this is what she spends all of her time dealing with in therapy.
I know, for a second I thought you were going to say this is what she spends all of her time living, her stale marriage.
No.
But I mean, I do think it's relevant for everybody, whether you've been in a relationship or anything longer than the limerent period, which is that initial falling in love stage.
How long does that last? 6 months?
The research says that it can last, on the outer limits from as little as 6 months to as long as 3 years. My personal anecdotal opinion, based on doing tons of couples therapy and having been in many relationships, is that it lasts typically for a lot of people about a year.
And then what happens? It slides into a little bit of routine and predictability.
There's also the first grand disillusionment that happens in every relationship. When I was younger, I used to think, God, I get along so well with everyone I date. Like, we have no problems. We don't fight. And at that point, we weren't even in conflict avoidance. It's just that in the beginning, like Chris Rock says, going all the way back to the 90s, when you first start dating someone, you're not dating them. You're actually dating their representative.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Yeah, they're like sanitized, better self, right? I mean, I love the me I am in the first year of a relationship. I have like no complaints, nothing negative to say. There's like, you're just putting your best foot forward. So I think what happens is the inevitable turn into what can really be an opportunity for real intimacy as you get to know someone and you differentiate yourselves. You're a we and you're two separate individuals. But what can go with that is a lot of loss, even just in the body, of all those neurochemicals that make everything your partner does seem great. You can't get enough of them, right? They're into like axe throwing, and suddenly you're like, I love axe throwing. Right? I mean, they play video games. You hate video games, but
you'll
suddenly
watch them play.
Right. So I think it's anything outside of that time that people have to dig in and get into the real hard work. And then how do you sustain a relationship spark over many years? You've been married a long time.
I have. And, we definitely started off as friends. So, I mean, we have a base of strong friendship. And I think that is the spark. I mean, I'll speak for myself. For my marriage, I think that is the spark, is that we spend a lot of quality time together. We walk together. We choose each other, want to hang out together all the time. We gravitate toward each other. We sit and watch TV at the end of the day together. So it's a lot of quality time, and it's a lot of friendship that is the underpinning of, I think, whatever spark there is in my marriage.
Yeah. And I have to say, I agree with that. I think just from even a couples therapy perspective, what many people say out there is true, that a foundation of friendship is really important. Now, there's spark that may need to be resuscitated or the flames stoked throughout the years, but it's really hard to get there and keep it without the foundation of friendship. And, we're kind of like you. I've only been married for 8 years. I was married previously, for those of you who don't know me yet. I was married very young and then divorced and single and dating in several different relationships, many relationships really, for a period of about a decade until about 10 years ago. I met my current husband, and I've been married now for, I think it's 8 years. Math has never been my strong suit,
Yeah.
but we too have a really strong foundation of friendship and enjoy spending time together. And I think that's a really healthy and essential quality that shouldn't be dismissed.
No. And, I want to just for our listener, I'm thinking of my clients that come in that have, maybe it's multiple decade, 2 decade, 3 decade long marriages plus. And there's this awareness around, I want to create connection with my partner, but there is just a lot of history.
Yeah.
There's a lot of buildup resentment. There's a lot of, I'll get closer to him when he stops doing X, or I'll get closer to her when she stops doing Y, or starts doing, something I need them to do. And there becomes this gridlock. We're not talking necessarily about gridlock today.
However, I'm glad you brought that up. And what I would say as a couples therapist is, resentment is drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. I also think it's inevitable sometimes when you feel that you've been mistreated. No one's really saying, bring it on. I want to feel resentful. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try to work through and release some of that by actively working on the relationship. And also, I would argue some of the things that people who don't have stored resentment and maybe the relationship's just gone stale would do that would actually maybe help you shed some of that resentment if you do. I think it's the attitude in a way sometimes, the choice of, I'm not going to do it because he or she isn't doing it, or because I don't like the way they're treating me. Because then you're really choosing to stay stuck in active disconnection instead of choosing, you know what? I do have some stored grievances and some things that have pissed me off over the years, but I want this relationship. So I'm going to put some energy into it. I'm going to put some effort. And it doesn't mean date night, it means having the hard conversation, talking about your real feelings. And feelings are not assumptions about your partner. Like, you never listen, you're manipulating me. Feelings are short, clear messages. Like, when you come home late and don't call me, I feel hurt.
Yeah.
That is sharing feelings. And you know what some people may not realize is the primary way couples feel intimate and close is through sharing painful feelings. It's extremely bonding to talk to your partner that way. So I think it is also for everyone, getting
Okay.
unstuck to some degree requires maybe doing the very things you most don't want to do when you
And
feel resentful.
And doing those things even while that those hurts haven't been fully processed,
Yeah.
like taking a little bit of a risk into that space
Yep.
and seeing if you can begin to change the tide. Not saying that you don't like that you wouldn't, benefit greatly from processing these things in something like couples therapy, but that you can begin to like instill your relationship with a little bit of goodwill no matter where you are.
Exactly. Low hanging fruit is expressing appreciation,
Love it.
noticing the good. It really makes a difference. And if you are feeling wronged or ignored or disconnected, or let's say you're not even really unhappy with your partner, you're just focusing all of your energy on your kids or your career, which I think is one of the most common things and can be a real danger zone. It's an active practice. It is choosing to be intentional about your relationship and invest yourself there. And it doesn't take a ton of time, but it does take a little bit of effort. Like, I'll give you an example, a small example from my own life that I hadn't even thought of. I had a friend, a neighbor friend, come by the other day, and she was just sitting in the living room with me chatting while I was taking a break from writing the book. And Steve, my husband, came home as we were chatting. And, I got up to give him a kiss and a hug. And then I came back and sat down and he went off and did his thing. And she was like, "Aw, and she's been married for a long time. She was like, "I love that you did that. I just noticed that you went up and got up and like kissed him hello and gave him a hug." And she said, "We do that too. But I think those are little teeny things that often go in long-term relationships. You stop sitting so close together on the couch. You stop cuddling. You stop giving an intentional kiss, hello, goodbye. You stop talking, making eye contact. These are all of the things that fuel connection that it's really easy to say, yeah, I'm tired. Yeah, you'll be here tomorrow."
And, I was just listening to something about the Gottman research, and I know you know
Yeah.
this better than
Yeah.
anyone, but they were saying that, you know, this whole idea of negative sentiment override, which is when so many of your interactions become negative and you're just like in a deficit of, and the person is so guarded though when you're coming towards them, like, what do you have to say now? Another criticism, another bit of contempt coming my way. And that the ratio is that when you're fighting, it should be 5 positives to 1 criticism, but
Yep.
that in daily life, and I'd never heard this before, and I wonder if you've heard it, that it's really 20 to 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I have
That
heard that.
and I was like, "Wow." I always thought
Yeah.
it was 5 to 1, but 20 to 1? I mean, think of that. 20 positive bids and turns, meaning I'm paying attention to you, I see you, I'm prioritizing you, I'm just touching my hand on your shoulder. I'm,
Yeah.
like, letting you know I'm here. 20 to 1.
And I think that speaks to how intentional you have to be. So, one of the biggest problems long before some come to couples therapy is that people put their relationship on autopilot. Because when you feel comfortable and everyone's talking about secure attachment right now, which is a wonderful thing, right? It's when you feel safe and secure in your relationship and your emotional energy isn't spent being anxious or preoccupied with worries about just the fundamental integrity of the relationship, as it should be. But with safety can come complacency if you're not careful. And feel safe, yes, and don't spend all of your time perseverating on your relationship, but don't stop fertilizing the garden either.
Yeah.
You gotta nurture it.
Mhm.
So I think a couple things just to mention, the importance of talking about the hard things. It's natural to be conflict avoidant.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Because this is what's coming
Mhm.
up for me, is that people don't know where to start with this. And
Yeah.
I want to know the absolute sticking your big toe in the water around a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, people do become so conflict avoidant
Yeah.
and they do not know how to have difficult conversations. Like you said, the layer one is just letting people know, like, when you didn't let me know you were going to be late for work, like it just it didn't make me feel good. It hurt my feelings.
Right.
I felt hurt.
Right.
What's like, if we're taking a step in, what
Yeah.
about like actually having a complaint? You were saying all the time that like conflict avoidance is the birthplace of like the disconnected relationship. And you said, look, just begin to express your feelings. Like
Yeah.
that's like basic level one, right? It
Yeah.
hurt me when you didn't never called and told me you were going to be home late. But now tell me, how do we go to the next level where I want to either process something that's really, really hurt me or something from the past where I want to like circle back around to it, or I want to make a complaint or ask for behavior change. These are
Yeah.
things that people stay away from. But
Yep.
I mean, what's the like, I'm still
No,
trying to create connection and I don't want to blow up the relationship.
right. No, this is what my whole book's about is having an intentional process that allows you to do that. And it really starts with, so first of all, let me just say, it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you have to build. And I would suggest starting small, taking micro interactions that bother you and starting to practice taking a little bit of time. I call it a healing hiatus. And this is just a processing time that's just for you. It's not necessarily anything even that involves your partner. Now, if something comes up that's a trigger for you, your partner throws a zinger, you don't like something they do, and in the moment you feel something in your body, then you might need to take some time and space away from them in order to have that processing time. But the most important thing is that you have a little bit of time with yourself to go inside, notice what you feel, learn to name your feelings. Most relationship things actually have a reactive layer, which is that you'll feel frustration, irritation, some iteration of anger. And then they have a deeper layer. And
Mm,
most of the time in relationships, it's hurt, it's sadness, it's shame, and most often with or fear. And a lot of people balk at that in couples therapy because it's like, oh, I'm not scared. Like, I'm going to fall off a mountain. But there's an underlying attachment fear about things that could either jeopardize the relationship or
mhm.
even simply the fear of pain, of, hearing something that's hurtful or taking a risk to be vulnerable and having it not land. That is very scary for people because that can feel like rejection. So it is hard, but I would say start small and spend some time first as you're learning to address things, some time for yourself to get really clear on what you feel. Recognize that your brain's going to make some meaning about what's happening about your partner and that you can't necessarily trust those thoughts. They're often generated from emotion. And it's okay to have your own story, but it can be helpful when you say, the story in my mind is that you don't care versus you don't care, which is blaming and
Mhm.
accusatory and almost guarantees you're going to get a defensive or dismissive response. So once you identify your feelings, then and you're clear on what that meaning is, the other big piece is, okay, why does this matter? Your feelings are information processing signals that point you to your needs. So you're feeling something for a reason. Follow that thread. If it's, let's just go with the example we're talking about now. If it's, I was hurt when you came home late and didn't call, right? There's a need, an implicit, hidden positive need in that, which is, hey, that hurt my feelings. In the future, it would mean a lot to me if you could remember to touch base with me when you're running late. So we
Yeah.
want to get in the habit of that kind of what I call assertive and vulnerable communication, where you're sharing your feelings and you're asking for what you need without any blaming, without assuming your partner's intentions, and really owning your experience and the impact your partner has on you rather than pointing that way and starting small.
I love that. And I mean, what that shows is that if you want to like reawaken your relationship or begin this process of reconnection, so much of it starts with yourself. Like knowing how things land in your nervous system, learning what you're making those things mean, getting to those core feelings, those core fears, so you can do a lot of that work with yourself. Like
Yes.
without your partner even knowing that you're doing that work, but
Yes.
just you slowing down those interactions and delivering things in a way that people can hear them, right? Like, that hurt me, or I felt afraid when you didn't call. That delivery alone is going to be something different.
You are making such a hugely important point because while you can never guarantee how your partner will respond, you can do everything right. And, they had a bad day or they haven't done work or there's a million reasons. What I find a lot in couples therapy is that people think they're being more vulnerable than they are. And so they're sending a signal or they're telling me, well, Colette, I say I'm open, I tell the truth. But
Mhm.
then I ask for an example of what they've said. And it's what I call an attachment bomb. It's like a huge lob, like, well, I can't stay in this relationship if you're going to behave like that. Okay, that's It's not, maybe that's honest based on the frame of mind you're in, but it's certainly not vulnerable. And that's going to set up,
Destabilizing. Yeah.
yeah, anything that even implicitly or especially explicitly threatens the relationship is a huge, feels like a huge threat to your attachment bond. So I think it's really, really recognizing that spending the time to get clear and regulated in your nervous system, and then come forward genuinely, vulnerably, short, clear messages that are vulnerable, is going to invite the best chance possible that you have that your partner can actually hear you and respond to you, and that a relationship is a system. So, if you're throwing an axe at your partner, right,
Yep.
versus tossing some rose petals, of course you're going to get something very different back. And worst case, you don't get the response you're hoping for. Well, that might hurt. You'll be able to handle it. It gives you information on the limits of your relationship, and you can make choices from there.
Yeah. And I guess just because we're talking to women, I mean, that's our primary audience. And this is a gross, probably overgeneralization, but men are very often geared towards physical touch, right?
Yes.
That be like instilling your relationship with a bit of goodwill can always come through affection and intimacy and begin a virtuous cycle,
Yeah.
which is, that sounds like women sometimes hear that like, oh, so I need to like initiate sex and that's what's going to like make this marriage feel better. But bringing some of that forward can sometimes give you a lot of goodwill.
Yeah. And, also, I think it's important to make the point, there are couples who don't have much of a sex life. And if
Yeah.
both people are really okay with that, really, truly okay with that, then that's fine. Right? There's no one right way, but most of the time, the sexual component of a relationship, there's kind of a couple of pillars in a relationship. There's the caretaking, the love and bindedness, that emotional intimacy, and then there's the sexual part. And with that, let's just say, the physical touch. Co-regulation is a big thing. Our nervous systems are actually designed, and this is scientific, however you feel about
Hmm.
sex and physical affection. It doesn't have to come from that either. But our nervous systems are actually designed to regulate twice as fast with somebody else's nervous system
Right.
as they are alone. So you can co-regulate by making eye contact, having physical touch, holding hands, cuddling, hugging,
Massaging each
kissing.
other's back, just,
Yes,
yep, sitting really
yes,
close together. Yeah.
exactly. And even there's been research that shows being about 18 inches apart and holding an eye gaze actually creates co-regulation. So, even if it's not sex, because I know that's another whole
That's a whole
topic that
other episode. Yes.
we will definitely get into. But having physical affection is a really important and another low hanging fruit way to keep your relationship connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's good for you individually. It really does have health benefits. I mean, I think that's an important one.
And partners very often can get into like a gridlock thing of like, I'm not going to initiate. And well, he's not initiating. Well, I'm not going to initiate. And
Yep.
either see if you can be vulnerable and be the first to initiate, can send your relationship in a different direction,
Yeah, and I don't know if
potentially.
everyone would like this, but I would argue, just again from like a therapy standpoint, that stance of, well, I'm not going to because you're not going to, that's really not an emotionally mature stance to take for a relationship. It's human. I'm not saying I've never felt like that. I'm definitely not saying that. But I think we can have those feelings and then rise above those impulses and maintain our commitment to the relationship, which is that both parties really should have the mindset of, I'm going to do 100% of my part. And if my partner doesn't, I'm going to address it in a healthy, vulnerable way. And if they still don't, and they still don't, and they still don't, but I'm doing my part, taking responsibility for my side of the street, then I have choices to make about the relationship.
There you go. Yeah. So, okay, are there kind of some more fun, light,
Yeah.
like, like, look, we have the hard conversations. Look, we're having sex. I just need to make it a little bit more fun
Yeah.
and energetic. And is this where like adventure and novel experiences and
Yeah.
kind of come to play?
Absolutely. And there's research that shows that doing something new stimulates the brain in a unique way. So there's also research that shows specifically for couples that having new experiences brings some passion to the relationship. So, and this may not be realistic for everybody. If you've got little kids at home or you're in a really demanding phase of your career, but if you do have the time and space, go out and try something new. It doesn't have to be something you do forever. It doesn't have to become out of a habit, but go midnight kayaking or something, or
That sounds dangerous, Colette.
okay, or I was going to say axe throwing again, right? But just try something totally different. Go have an
Yeah.
experience, and it doesn't have to be something you spend a lot of money on. But I
Yeah.
would also say, for those who don't have the time to do that, never underestimate the power of also just carving a little bit of undistracted time.
Yeah. Yeah.
10 minutes a day that you don't have your phone, that there aren't kids around, that the TV's not on. I think you don't need a couples therapist to tell you that, but people don't do it. That's the catch. People don't do it.
I go back to like a little bit of the Gottman. One of my favorite interventions he has is, and I'm not exactly sure how he couches it, but it's just a conversation where you're really just listening to your partner and you're doing, instead of offering advice or interrupting with, like, well, I'm not sure why you handled it that way, or any kind of criticism, you just have this agreeable, like, wow, validating. It's like a validating conversation of holding space, making eye contact and going like, "Oh my god, that must have been tough for you.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds hard." And just giving your partner space. I don't think we do that in well-established relationships. I think we jump in, I think we interject. We have lots of opinions. Can we be the soft place for people to fall?
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing.
I think that's huge. I think that's really the point. One of the major points of couples therapy is to teach people to do that. Some people aren't doing that with anyone anywhere in their lives. They're too busy trying to talk people out of their feelings or solve problems. And in general, I don't think most people like that. If someone wants that kind of prescriptive advice, they'll certainly ask for it. But in your relationship, it is so powerful. What I hear from couples all day, every day, mostly women, men have been socialized and conditioned to tune into emotions a little less historically. I think that's changing. But what I hear from people is, I don't want you to do anything. I want you to just sit here and be with me, be present, be engaged, right? That active, we call it as therapists, active
Active
listening.
listening.
I'm just letting you know. And Laura, I feel like this is what you and I do for each other as
Yes, of
friends.
course. Yeah, like, no, we're not jumping in with, well, have you thought about X, or why
Right.
don't you do Y? Well, I don't
Right.
know why you're dealing with this now. I mean, it's just a lot of like, wow, yeah, I get it. It must be like that.
Right.
And holding space. Can you hold space? And just see how powerful that is for your partner.
Exactly. And if you couple that with curiosity,
Mm,
curiosity always for yourself, of course, but curiosity about your partner's world, showing an interest, a genuine interest beyond how was your day? Good. Okay. Let me scroll through Instagram. But like, how was your day? What's happening in your day? What are you scared of? What's keeping you up at night? What do you long to do that isn't happening? I mean, ask your partner some questions, because over time, we just get like, there's this body in the bed next to us. And if we're not thinking about it, you might know more about the person you sit next to on the bus
ugh.
than you know about what's going on in your partner's head.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, something that I love, and not everybody loves like future tripping. I certainly do, though. I'm like a big schemer and dreamer.
Me too.
And I mean, you and I do this with each other a lot. That stresses some people out, but I
Yeah,
think that in couples, it's huge too. Is like, what are we doing next?
yeah,
What's our next big thing we're working for? Is there something we want? Is there a goal we want to go for together? Like, never, never like hold yourself back from a little scheming and dreaming,
I
even if it's
agree.
like planning a vacation or just something fun to look forward to. That's totally yours as a couple.
I totally agree. I think that couples have to constantly revise and redefine their goals, their shared vision. What's next? What do we want? Their value system together. I mean, a relationship is its own living, breathing organism. And I think the big thing that we're talking about here is that you can't just let it be, you can't just let it run in the background and
It'll
expect it
die
to thrive.
like an
Yeah,
unattended plant. It'll just
exactly.
like wither on your windowsill.
Exactly.
And all these things we're talking about, I love them. I think they're even more important. They're great in the good times. Like, don't think that you have to wait for your relationship to be perfect to do these things.
Right.
These are so great in the bad times or the hard times. Just to get closer, to get more sense of unity, to like be aligned with each other. It this is for all periods.
Agreed. And, I know I'm a couples therapist, so I'm biased to some degree, but really, I just want to throw out there that couples therapy has changed. And it's not people on the brink of divorce or they're all coming in post affair in my office. It's people who are really committed to their relationship. They're getting stuck around communication. They're getting into those negative cycles because it starts out as like a little fight over nothing. But before you know it, you're fighting about the reactions and counter reactions.
Mhm.
So if you're getting stuck, consider couples therapy. Now, I know some women will say their partners, male or female, don't want to go, they can't get them there. And that's a challenge sometimes. But, maybe you're not sure, bring it up, try a session. And if not, go to therapy yourself. But I
Yep.
think try some of these things first. You'd be amazed that just putting a little bit of effort, even 5-10 minutes a day, of really nurturing connection can reap huge dividends.
I agree. So should we go into the takeaways?
Yeah, yeah, just recapping. I mean, I think we've covered them all. But the first takeaway is really stop avoiding. Conflict avoidance is the slow, silent killer of relationships. If you're not talking about the hard things, you have no conflict. Your relationship is either disconnected, detached, or heading there.
Yeah,
So
it's
you've
not a
got
good sign if you're not, like people who brag about not fighting, like don't say that out loud in front of a therapist. It's like, nah,
exactly,
we
exactly
don't
that.
we don't think that's a good sign.
It's not a good sign. And now, of course, and I'm sure we'll do a whole episode on this at some point. There's a difference between constructive conflict and
Yeah.
destructive conflict, and you want to make it
100%.
constructive. So, the second takeaway is really learn how to identify your feelings and build a muscle to take the risk to be vulnerable. Start small, bring things up where you're focused on you and your emotional experience. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. I'm scared, rather than projecting assumptions onto your partner about their behavior. You'll have a much better chance of being heard, and connection really comes from intimacy, is about sharing our emotional experience, including the painful ones. And then the third is physical affection. I'm separating this completely from sex. Sex, of course, is a bonding activity, not discouraging anyone from that. But if for some reason, you're not in a phase of life or there are challenges for your sex life, be affectionate. It is really, really important. We are designed to be close, to touch. It helps us regulate our nervous systems. And I think number 4 is setting aside dedicated time that is undistracted for you and your partner, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes a day. If you only have 1 minute, make it 1 minute. It's like mindfulness, right? It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you do it, that you put down your phone, that you turn off all the distractions, that you look at your partner and you have some little time that you're connected and curious about each other. And really, to your great point, Laura, actively listening, holding space for them. And the
Mhm.
last one that I think is really important as a takeaway is novel experiences. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but go out and do something new together, even if it's going for a walk and taking a totally different route or driving down the road and walking in a different neighborhood. We know that lights up the brain for passion and connection. So take advantage of these things that are free and easy. It's really about being intentional.
And for more information on this, go to our website at insightfromthecouch.org. We will list all of these things if you are not hearing them or retaining them. We will make a more comprehensive download for you so that you can take these things home and begin to practice them.
Because your relationship's your greatest resource in life. It's worth it to nurture it.
Amen. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you got some insights from our couch.
See you next time.